listen for a little while. Pay no attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. Program reality, double thing duality. A boot upon the face of all mankind. Our numbers up and the dead woman sign. Go along to get along. Hypnotized by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The hordes upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait your turn. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's best. Worldwide genocide. The overlords of hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotting, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol, in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Sunday, June the 26th, 2022. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Tim here on the Iron Mountain foothills in Elizabeth, Tennessee. We'd like to thank you for joining us again. Our channel's been growing and you all have been a part of that because YouTube has kind of cut us off from the algorithm. So the fact that we're getting some new likes and new subs and people are watching the videos and commenting on them, that's all thanks to y'all sharing it with people that you know that you think might like it. Thanks again to Yeti for joining us on the last stream. We had some good feedback on him. People want to see Yeti some more, so we'll hopefully be doing that in the future. Like I said, you can check him out on Twitch at Yetimus Maximus. If you haven't already, like this video, hit the share button, send it to somebody you think might like it, and if you haven't hit the notification bell, do that so you'll know when we're live. It's every Sunday and Wednesday at 10 p.m. Sundays we have a theme for the show, and Wednesdays we usually have just a set of news and current events that we look at. We're kind of going to do a little bit of both tonight, Tim, so hope you're ready for that.
I'm not. I've successfully isolated myself from the news, so this will be more of, hey, tell me what's going on.
Good evening, Dalton. He says, good evening, fellas. Good to have you with us. We're going to be talking Mike Judge tonight. We talked about that a little bit on Wednesday night. We said that might be something we
about Mike Judge. Almost every episode.
We've thrown a little bit of King of the Hill in there. I've mentioned Silicon Valley a few times. One thing we haven't really got into is Idiocracy, and I think that's one that's really important for us to get into. This weekend, actually this morning, I watched Beavis and Butthead do The Universe. And I gotta say, Mike Judge has done classic Mike Judge and taken on the culture in a totally, original way. And with this, in this film, if you haven't seen it, I won't give any spoilers, but I will go ahead and tell you a little bit about the premise of it. I'm not going to give it away. But in the film, Beavis and Butthead are, as usual, they're misinterpreting somebody's cues and thinking that they want to have sex with them. So they're once again on a mission to score. And we see several scenes revisited, a little bit of nostalgia with Cornholio and We look back at Beavis and Butthead. It starts with them. They commit a crime basically, and they find a caricature of a liberal judge who believes that it's society's fault that Beavis and Butthead are the way they are and that they shouldn't be harshly punished. So rather than, they end up burning down the science fair in the first few minutes of the film, and they, rather than being punished, they decide to send them to space camp as a reward, which was supposed to be the reward for the first place students of the science fair.
Right.
But the judge says, well, you guys who won the science fair, you're going to be fine no matter what. So we're going to send Beavis and Butthead off to space camp. And
no, I mean, like, that's obviously funny because if you consider the context of Beavis and Butthead getting, that's in corporate speak. I've seen in multiple handbooks. That's called rewarding negativity.
right.
Is when you find somebody who's doing something bad, so you kind of give them an easier task, so at least they'll get that one thing done. There's a country, I'm wanting to say it's, Goff would probably know since he keeps up with all those Netherlands countries and stuff, but one of those countries up there, that's how their jail system works, is if you get, like, if you're a repeat offender or whatever, they put you into sort of like a social program, where it's almost like high school all over again.
They send you off to an island.
There. Yeah, and you stay, I don't know if it's an island or not, but I know
Yeah,
they
I've
stay
read
in like
about
a
it.
university sort of setting where you just kind of, I don't know. They figured like it's better to, hey, maybe they just need a few years off. It's kind of what it is. It's like maybe some people have had it so hard they really just need a vacation. From
Well, they
their
do claim to
existence.
have a pretty low recidivism rate. I can't remember exactly where that is, but I have read about that before.
I think a lot
And
of
it's
it-
like basically a town that they have set up on the island that the prisoners find a place in the town to function, just like regular society. So it's better for them to move back into society.
It's kind of like the theory of
The idea.
people just need time to heal.
Yeah.
And if you can just make them not have to worry about the felony that's on their record, and maybe not have to worry about a job, maybe let them be the gardener at this place that's just going to kind of let them be a freak show for the first 2 months until they get over their shit. I don't know. I'm not educated enough on it to know if it works or not.
Yeah, well, they claim it does, but a lot of the times governments claim their policies work because they want to keep getting them funded. So hard to say. Dalton says, my mother's sister lives in Blunteville, Tennessee, actually. Next time I visit her, I'll have to meet you guys in a bar and have some drinks. Hell yeah, Dalton.
No, you
We're
can
right
make,
near Blunteville.
2 or 3 different directions.
Yep. Yeah, we're right near Blunteville. You're right in between Bristol and Johnson City and Elizabeth in there. So, yeah, we definitely could hook
There's a
up.
tap house in any direction.
That's right. Now, back
You were
to...
talking about the Beavis and Butthead episode where they were essentially getting to go to space camp for being shitty.
Yeah, and what happens is they have it's 1998 when the movie starts, and they are chosen, and basically they are playing with the rocket equipment there at space camp, and they figure out how to insert a rocket into an opening, and they are playing around with it, watching it, and where Beavis and Butthead's minds go. So, but the fact that they insert this rocket into the opening so easily, or this whatever this thing is, the NASA goes on a publicity stunt basically, and it says we're going to have two troubled youths basically that are going to be American heroes, and they're going to dock this piece of space equipment, and it all goes horribly wrong, and Beavis and Butthead end up going in through a wormhole into Galveston, Texas in 2022. So the Beavis and Butthead from the 1990s wake up 24 years later in 2022, and hilarity ensues naturally. It's kind of similar to the theme from Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Where, if you haven't seen that, it stars Luke Wilson. It's a Mike Judge film. Luke Wilson and Maya Rudolph are chosen to participate in Army experiments. And Luke Wilson is chosen because he is the most average person that the Army can find. He has no attachments to
Captain
anybody.
America's situation, like let's find somebody who's just meh.
Yeah, middle of the road on
I
everything.
guess Captain America was really a big poon in the movie, but I don't think it was that dramatic in the comics.
I've not seen it, to be honest.
The Captain America?
Yeah.
Well, they exaggerated his body down to be like super bony, and like
Okay.
super tiny.
In the new movie? Or always?
Well, the newer movie,
Okay.
I guess, whichever one has Chris, what's his face in it? I get the Chris's mixed up.
I don't know. I've not seen. I'm not an MCU guy.
I'm
like
not
the
anything.
X-Men.
I'm not a well. They're in the Marvel universe though.
No,
They're just owned by Sony now.
That's the only ones I've really got into, and it's been a long time since
Well,
I
I'll be
got
honest
into
with
them.
you, X-Men. Why not? It's not about the X-Men. Are actually some of the worst. Some of the Marvel movies are actually pretty good if you're into comic movies. But anyway, he was the most average guy.
Okay.
Was the whole point, was the reason.
Well, Joe was basically the average Joe in Idiocracy, and he was chosen, and so was a street prostitute played by Maya Rudolph, who were chosen to be participate in this army experiment where they would be frozen for. They weren't supposed to be 500 years; they're supposed to be a year. And then the guy in charge, he was played by, I think he was played by Stephen Root. He was in charge of the project, was caught with prostitutes, and they basically buried the whole thing. And Luke Wilson and Maya Rudolph characters end up buried under a bunch of rubble for 500 years, at which time they're unfrozen. They find the world in a totally different state. Basically, all the idiots have continued to reproduce while the smart people have decided that reproduction was not in their best interest. There's a hilarious clip or hilarious scene from the movie where a couple are talking about why they're not reproducing. I bet I can find that real quick. I should have pulled it up already.
Just pull up Idiocracy intro. I hate to say it, like, I like the movie, but the intro, like the first 8 minutes or so, are 4 minutes and 40 seconds. The first 4 minutes and 40 seconds are way better than the rest of the movie. The rest of the movie's worth watching, but the first 4 minutes are the absolute best part of the movie.
I was listening to an interview with Mike Judge on Joe Rogan just today. I didn't know he was on there when we said we were going to do this show. He was on there on the 22nd, so it's like right after we said we were going to do Mike Judge.
We've been talking about doing this for a while.
Yeah, and we keep doing this. Other programs will have the same stuff that we're doing right around the same time we do. It's pretty crazy. Mind. Yeah, I guess so.
Or maybe we're just not unique.
Maybe. It could be both. Well, not both. But no, Joe Rogan, he was talking to Mike Judge, and Mike Judge was saying basically that he made this whole movie just so he could make the intro, basically.
Well, there you go. That's a...
So it stands right with it. So we'll show part of it, and we'll do some commentary over it. I got to turn on the desktop audio too.
The live stream on the Wednesday when your thing was a little bit quiet.
Oh, was it?
To me, it was anyway.
My microphone or
no, the video?
Okay.
When you were watching the video,
gotcha.
it was a little quiet.
All right, I can fix that. Let's turn
not
the
I guess
desktop
last time
audio.
Yeah, you said it would be the Wednesday before when I was watching.
Okay, cool. Let's try this and see if this is a little bit better now.
I know it looks like we're buffering pretty hard, but we probably just need to keep going because it's always going to do this.
Well, let's check it out. Here's the intro for Idiocracy.
21st century began. Human evolution was at a turning point. Natural selection, the process by which the strongest, the smartest, the fastest reproduced in greater
this is on
numbers
YouTube,
than
so
the
I guess it's
rest.
okay for
a
us to...
process which had once favored
as
the
long as you comment
noblest
on top
traits
of
of
it, all the
man,
fair
now
use.
began to favor different traits. Most science fiction of the day predicted a future that was more civilized and more intelligent.
But the big
as
and the
time
strong
went
and the
on,
sexy
things seemed to be heading
all
in the
screwed like
opposite
rabbits.
direction, a dumbing down.
And the brains did
How
not.
did this happen? Evolution does not necessarily reward
You
intelligence.
see, the funny
no
thing about
natural
this is, like, I
predators
know
within the herd
so many people. Like,
began
it
to
really
simply
does seem
reward
like that whole
those
truth in
who
comedy
produced the
thing, you know?
most and left the intelligent to become an endangered species.
Having kids is such an important decision.
We're just waiting for the right time. It's not something you want to rush into, obviously.
No way.
I guess we could have a conversation about the IQ studies at one point sometime.
Yeah.
But they're not concrete.
Thought you was on the pill or some shit.
Hell no!
Must have been taking a break.
Thank you, Dalton. He says we're not buffering. Might just be me down
There's
here.
no way we could have a child now. Not with the market the way it is, no.
No, that just wouldn't make any sense.
Meanwhile, Cleveland is getting it on with the whole trailer park.
over here.
Mean nothing to me, baby.
Cleveland's king.
Well, we finally decided to have children, and I'm not pointing fingers, but it's not going well.
And this is helping.
I'm just saying that before I have in vitro, maybe you should be willing to...
It's always me.
Judge
right?
said this was a really difficult movie to make because there were so many characters.
Yeah.
There's 65 speaking roles. They had to cast all of them, get them all together, and actually make the movie. They had a low budget for effects and things.
They cut that
Cleveland
clip
is
out.
lucky to be alive.
For just for
He attempted
YouTube.
to
He goes,
jump
I'm
a jet
fucking
from
both
a
you
lake
girls
that
tonight.
was swimming
He's
in
like, I'm gonna
crotch
fuck
of the
all
Iron
you.
King.
No, both
But
you girls are
thanks to
getting
recent
pregnant.
advances
Yeah,
in
that's
stem
what it
cell
was.
And then it
research
goes, ding,
the
ding.
fine work of Doctors Krinsky
You're
and
right.
Altshuler,
They did cut
Cleveland
that
should regain full reproductive function.
Get your hands off my junk.
And Cleveland did regain full
Unfortunately,
reproductive
Trevor passed
function.
away from a heart attack while masturbating to produce sperm for artificial insemination. But I have some eggs frozen, so just as soon as the right guy comes along, you know.
And
The right guy
so it
probably
went
never
for
came along.
generations.
Carol was
Although few, if
50
any,
years
seemed
old
to
and-
notice.
no longer able to reproduce. Basically, that's the idea. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but
The Army began a top-secret experiment.
The idea is
Our first
all the
subject for
smart
the human
people stopped
hibernation
boning
experiment.
because they were trying to be financially responsible, and in the meantime, all the people that were out there just whacking, rubbing nuts out are producing kids in mass that aren't taking care of them, who end up being low IQ, low value people who ruin society, and in the end try to water the vegetable garden using Gatorade.
yeah. It's got electrolytes, bro.
Because they'll believe it. And I guess the main point there is the stupid people do anything the corporations sell them.
It was really a tech, what do you call it?
It's pretty
A
anti-tech.
critique on technology and on marketing, really. And you look at all the crazy marketing it goes throughout the whole video. There's lots of corporate branding, and it's gone down to the lowest common denominator. Like, what was it? Tarleton cigarettes, fuck, if you don't like Tarleton's, fuck you, on the billboard, and it shows the big buff guy, you know, and then like there's the
Well, the
Carl
obvious one was
Jr.
as soon as they land, as soon as he gets there, the very first thing he sees is what is it, butt fuckers.
butt fuckers. Fuddruckers over the years slowly turns into butt fuckers. As
Well,
people
and it's
forget the
also
language.
it's real similar to, I guess, in a Diet Coke sort of situation. It's similar to Running Man too, because they have the big arena with the monster trucks and
Yeah.
stuff. Like everything is
Yeah.
about keeping people entertained.
Yeah, they're, what do they call it? Retribution. No, what do they call the thing? Rehabilitation. That's what they call it. Yeah, when Luke Wilson's character gets sentenced to to be rehabilitated, he thinks, oh, that doesn't sound so bad, and then it turns out he's got to fight all those big monster trucks and Beef Supreme,
And
the
the
character.
president
with
is
the-
essentially Mr. T.
Yeah, Terry Crews, one of my favorite. That's where I really got turned on to Terry Crews, was seeing him in this role as Hector. What is his name? Hector Mountain Dew Camacho or something like that. He's got a bunch of middle names, and but he's the president. Anyway, when Joe wakes up 500 years later, he is the smartest man in the world, and he talks like a normal person, but
He's basically the smartest man in the world with an IQ of like 100.
right, yeah, maybe 115. He's pretty average guy, but he wakes up, and they said he was middle of the road physically, middle of the road mentally. Everything about him was just as average as they could find. And so when he wakes up, though, everyone else has gone. Society's gone really downhill. All the buildings are falling over, and they've basically just tied them to one another to keep them from falling. The buildings are strapped
It's funny
together.
because they've done that in parts
Yeah.
of Russia. So no, they did it during the Cold War. They were trying to have like big parades for the missiles and stuff, and so the government came in and pulled people's buildings back off the street, and they didn't care what the backs of them looked like. So if you take like photos, modern day photos, like you can find them from like the 90s before they started fixing them,
Wow.
where it was just like a lot of buildings were just held up with these like boards, like kind of like propped up against them, to keep them from tipping backwards and
I
stuff.
think I've seen photos of that.
Because it's all show, just like modern day South
Right.
Korea. Allegedly, I've not been. So
Well, Judge, he started with, I think his first movie was Office Space. He had the Frog Baseball short where the characters Beavis and Butthead first made their appearance on, what was it, Liquid TV or Liquid Television on MTV, where they had the different animation stuff. Well, that's where Beavis and Butthead came from. He made a short, and then they said, well, we got to have a series.
since a lot of those animations come from shorts on other ones, kind of like what was The Simpsons also got its start on what was was it in Living Color or Mad TV?
Oh, I don't remember. It was a sketch comedy
But it
show.
was like people
Tracy
liked it,
Ullman
and they were
on
like,
it.
well, no,
Yeah.
let's just do a whole thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that that's how Beavis and Butthead got started, but that makes sense.
Well, if you remember when we were kids, everybody talked about Frog Baseball, Beavis and Butthead, but nobody had the episode, and that was because it was a one-time deal that they ran on Liquid TV, and so it never really, it was almost like a pilot, even though it wasn't necessarily intended to be that way, but it didn't really air much on MTV after that, and then I think it got banned from MTV shortly after it aired for the first time. So anyway, Beavis and Butthead were created. They basically turned into a media empire when we were teenagers. They had Beavis and Butthead Do America, the movie. They had video games on Nintendo and Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and they were okay. The Super Nintendo one I had a lot of fun on, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was a great game by today's standards, but I played it a lot.
I swear, the only thing, like, I watched Beavis and Butthead a little here and there, and I was around it enough to kind of know, all the jokes and that sort of thing. But the only thing I remember that I still quote every now and then for some reason, you ever got those quotes that are in your head and they're never coming out?
Yeah.
Is that one episode where they're watching Lemmy's Ace of Spade videos. And he goes, "Ha, what's wrong with that guy?" And he goes, "Looks like he's got Cocoa Puffs glued to his face." You know, because the big moles on Lucy. That's the only thing I remember about Beavis and Butthead, other than all the meme jokes.
Well, the music videos were pretty awesome, and that was where one of the best things I liked about it. I mean, the stories were good, but if you watch them now, they don't have the music videos in them. I guess they didn't have the rights free to those songs, so it lacks a lot when you don't have them sitting on the couch watching the music
that's
videos.
kind of ahead of its time if you really consider that's kind of like commentary videos now, and it's almost more like a perverted version of the old men off of the Muppets.
Yeah, it is. And there was probably people probably paid money to get their videos mentioned, you know, on Beavis and Butthead and promoted that way. So we didn't realize at the time, but we were still probably taking part in marketing, some of the marketing that he's making fun of and poking fun at in.
You're getting there now. Okay. You got your in chats.
He turns into Beavis on mushrooms, says Dalton. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yep. I remember those days. It's been a long time, but yeah, I think most people do, especially if you take what they call a heroic dose. But we'll get into that into another video. Can you imagine on Beavis on mushrooms, though? You might unlock the keys to the universe.
He'd probably just super calmed out.
Yeah, he probably would. You know, there's people like that they've become very stoic and very reflective.
People respond differently to different drugs.
Do. So sometimes even crazy people might calm down. When I was young, we always just would try to go out and talk to the moon or something.
That's always a good thing to
throw
do.
stuff up and watch the moonlight reflect through it, and then try to talk to the moon.
It's not going to hurt you, so that's a safe play toy, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know, like, I've heard, I'm not certain, like, Hank Hill was, like, loosely based on, like, his grumpy old uncle or something.
Yeah, Tom Anderson in Beavis and Butthead, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Here, boys, it's been working in my tool shed. The voice is almost the same. He does the voice a little bit different, and he looks different, but...
Even the voice from season 1 to season 2 changes quite a bit,
true.
and a lot of them. Of course, that's not uncommon.
No, when Mike Judge, his voice, he does the voice for Butthead. I don't know if he does Beavis or not, but Butthead sounds a lot like his speaking voice, but it sounds different in the new movie. But yeah, Hank Hill, he was based on, I mean, he came from the character Tom Anderson. I mean, he shares some of his proclivities, his, conservative bent, which is challenged often in the King of the Hill show. That's kind of one of the main points of the show, is Hank coming to terms with the changing, the way the culture is changing society. One of the episodes that first comes to mind is when Hank encounters a drag queen. So Peggy goes to a drag queen store. She used to go. It's funny because she calls. She
has big feet.
Yeah, she has huge feet. And there's one episode where Hank and Bobby go off on vacation without her, and she sneaks off, and you think she's having an affair or something, but it turns out she's going off to sneak and buy shoes when nobody's around because she has size 16 shoes, or one size 16 and one size 16 and a half. And she goes to,
specific detail.
Well, she calls the shoe store, and they have what she needs, and she goes down there and she picks her shoes, and the shoe store owner says, "I'll have Chuck and Buzz carry them out to the car for you." But anyway, in this other episode, she goes to buy shoes, and the store is gone, so she has to find another place, and it's called something like Clarissa's Closet or something like this. Or the Closet, maybe that's what it is. And she meets a woman there who is impressed by her femininity and asks her, how she does things, like take a bite of a sandwich without smearing makeup on it and things like this. And Peggy tells her all about it. And then later we find out that person is actually a transgender. There's a man dressing as a woman, and that
Peggy's been shopping at a drag store.
Yeah, and he thinks that Peggy is also a man dressed as a woman, which really, hurts Peggy's feelings when she finds out. But Hank, when he comes across this information, Peggy finds out, and she comes and she just needs a shoulder to cry on, and she tells Hank, the woman that I've been hanging out with, Carolyn, I think her name was, she's like, turns out she's not a woman at all, but a man who dresses like a woman. And Hank is just like, well, now hold on, that doesn't make any sense. And he just kind of brushes over it, and she continues to tell him about it, and then he says, well, this sounds like one of those problems that you should be discussing with your girlfriends, maybe like that Carolyn, who she just told him was actually a man. That's why she's upset. But it just did not compute with Hank, and some of the things didn't. But most of the time, Hank would come to realize that everybody's different, and even though his traditional values he often found that they did have value and they were worth preserving, but that other things can happen that don't necessarily conflict with that, and and he can change his viewpoint. So not in that episode, not necessarily because he didn't, but it was more of, I think it was more for the viewer to realize that this is a thing that is happening, and people are seeing it, and you see also Hank encountering the internet, which is pretty funny, and
which is another foot episode because she ends up getting hooked into a foot fetish website. I think one of the reasons I liked King of the Hill was, yes, it did have that PSA Golden Girls thing where they'd try to teach you a lesson about how your conservatism can be stucky, but there was a whole lot of episodes where Hank was right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It was like, hey, well, they would like show a group of people, kind of like I'm trying to think of an episode, like the archaeology people that tried to take advantage of the yard, where Peggy was like, yeah, you can dig around a little bit, and they end up taking advantage of Tress and just leveling the whole yard.
Yep.
And just kind of showing that even when people seem to have good intentions, sometimes they're not good people.
Well, unlike the episode where Bobby, he enters a fashion show for plus size boys, and when it starts, you know, everybody it frames it like Hank is being mean by not letting his son participate. But when the show starts and Hank carries Bobby off out of the show without participating in it, it's done at the mall, and some boys start throwing, you know, donuts and start disrupting the show and making a big mess of it, and that it turns out, you know, Hank understands human nature, and
same with the witches coven. It's like, that's one of the best episodes.
I think so
At
too.
the end when they're on that baseball field, he goes, "Oh my God, you guys are just dorks."
Yeah, he says, "You're so dorky, I want to kick your ass," or something like that. Yeah, and that one stars David Cross, who plays a really good character in it. So if you haven't seen that, it's called The Witches of East Arlen is the name of that episode. I'm a King of the Hill aficionado, a little bit of one anyway.
Hank thinks he's playing poker.
Yeah. He's got some new cards, and turns out he's got tarot cards, and he ends up with some witches, and they end up trying to get him to drink dog blood. So Hank is encountering these people who are into New Age witchery, and they're trying to recruit his son into it. He also comes into with Dale, who was, you know, supposed to be the crazy conspiracy guy at the beginning of this show. A lot of the things that Dale talked about, actually, he talks about like the Trilateral Commission, which are true, and the world government system, and the Beast computer system that was being built at the time. Dale actually,
The Beast.
yeah, known as
the porn one.
Yeah, that was the one where Hank's information got fed into the porn computer, and they kept sending him free porn in the mail. Like that ever happens? Who's going to send you free porn in the mail and free butt plugs? And
Never had it happen, but I think I would just redistribute the wealth.
B says mine is the one where Bill joins the singing group. Dale's rant is amazing. Yes, he says, what is he says? This chorus is the feces when shame eats too much stupidity, or something like that. Where Bill joins the men's group.
Yeah. He's literally losing his job to be part of this weird men's group.
Yeah.
No, Dalton's one where he says the episode where Hank actually smokes marijuana is probably my absolute favorite one.
That's a good one too.
You got a weak flame here, pal. This is clearly an inferior tobacco.
Yeah, damn NAFTA. Clearly an inferior tobacco. Dale knew exactly what was going on, even with Jordan Redcorn. Yeah, I think so too, dude. I think Dale, if you look at it from the viewpoint of one of the running jokes in the show is, you know, that John Redcorn is Dale's son,
For the first
Joseph's father.
what, five seasons?
Yeah.
They stopped it at one point.
No, they kept it going.
No, I'm saying like they kept the affair. They stopped the affair.
Oh, they
after a
stopped
while,
the
and
affair,
It became
yeah.
more about more like this thing where John Redcorn's having to live. Like I did like that part where they tried to show him going off on his own and stuff like that, like growing separate, and how he was still trying to raise Joseph without traumatizing him.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a Shady Do-Rags YouTuber. He does an episode about how John Redcorn is the most horrible person in the the world, and he makes a good case for that.
It's pretty close. Yeah.
He makes a case between Nancy and John, which one is worse. They're both pretty bad.
Well, I mean, like probably John, because he keeps trying it even after she. Like I remember one of the points they bring up is how ungrateful he was even after Dale went and got all that land for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I'm just saying, like, I I think the affair stopped around season 4 or 5.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
They tried to move beyond it.
But I think B's right. Dale knew all along. If you listen to some of the comments he makes, you could take him in ignorance, where he is, referring to how there's one I think of where he's talking about how he can't wait to be in the arms of his trusty wife, trusty wife. Like right after he catches her with red corn, and he catches her. He knows.
You don't think it was just inflection humor?
At first you think that, but if you watch the show as much as I do, you
With
think
his film theory, of course.
Yeah.
But, well, I'll let you keep going.
I think that Dale knew exactly what was going on. Dale caught John Redcorn sneaking into his house one night and thought he was trying to steal something. I forgot, but he didn't think he was trying to steal his wife. Yeah, it was his mower. He shot him with a beat.
lawnmower.
It says, "Now get in there and start massaging my wife."
Get in there and massage my
But if you
wife.
really watch subtly later on, Dale, he hits Nancy with some jabs and some barbs that just have to sting her for the rest of her life, because he pretends that he is thanking her for being so trusty when he knows the truth, and he's doing it to sting her. That's my theory anyway. I don't think he really knows exactly what's going on, and he pulls Hank into it too. For example, in the episode where they go looking after where Joseph and Bobby run off, because Dale convinces Joseph that he's conceived by an alien. Well, when he gets Hank into this too, he says to Hank, well, I was in Marfa, Texas when Joseph was conceived. What other explanation could there be? And Hank thinks he's going to say, I know that John Redcorn's his father, because he says he left Nancy with John Redcorn. And he says, well, it's got to be an alien that is Joseph's father. Obviously, they took my seed, abducted me, and took my seed and implanted it. Now, it could be, I guess, coping mechanism, but I feel like Dale really knows, and he loves to push it in her face and use it to his advantage.
I'm going to say that it's psychological denial.
Well, he can keep his place. I think that's what they want you to think.
I think it is. I think it has to be denial.
That's on the top level of it. I think on the deeper level, it's not.
The reason I think it has to be denial is because the episode where he almost gets shot because they think he's a sniper on top of the school thing. So a lot of the stupidity you could pass off as playing dumb, but I don't know how you could be almost get shot with the stuff. I don't know. Maybe there's other evidence of that one. I guess my main point is a lot of his stuff can't be chalked up to playing 4D chess so much as luck.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that in general. I just think he knows about Nancy and John Redcorn.
Right. Okay.
And he uses it to his advantage because, one, Nancy makes all the money. Dale has, if he admits to it, then he has to give up his free ride, basically.
He's allowing her to have a side piece.
Yeah, and he has a smoking hot wife that he gets to bang once or twice a year. And
he gets to stay in the basement and be crazy.
Do whatever he wants, and he doesn't have to admit that, he's not the father of Joseph. So I think there's a case to be made for your position, but I think that if you watch the show enough, especially towards the end of it, the little jabs and barbs that Dale throws at Nancy and the whole cast who know about it.
There's a film theory that Bobby is
Bill's son, and Bill even says that and I think there's a good case for that, but I don't know if I buy that one.
Because you got the narrow urethra, you got the Bill's always been obsessed with her. Why is she so repulsed by her?
In one episode, he does say that on a dark rainy night he slept with Peggy. When Bill and Hank and Dale all think they're going to die, they're about to drown, and he says, on a dark rainy night I slept with Peggy, and Hank says, no, you didn't, and he says, I know. But why would he confess that if he thought he was going to die? So I don't know, but Hank does. There's a guy that did a whole breakdown on it.
He looks for one. He looks like cotton.
Yeah.
So it does, but it's there's good film theories.
But the guy who made that theory, he also has the theory that Cotton is actually Bobby's father, which and saying that's why Peggy hates Cotton so much.
Yeah, that would be that. Yeah.
I don't know though. I don't necessarily buy that one.
Explain why he likes Bobby so much.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Cotton likes Bobby more than he likes Hank.
That's true. He does. And then we could talk King of the Hill all night for sure. We've got Office Space. I think that when you get right down to it, it just shows that Mike Judge really understands the culture. He looks into it from a lot of different angles, and you can tell he is. I know he's worth $75 million right now, but you look at something like Office Space, and you can tell he at least at one point understood what it was like to be regular working stiff, trying to get by and trying to be honest and having the ability to rip people off and whether you do that or not, if anybody's going to know, it's a kind of a morality tale in one way, and then it's also a sticking it to the man tale, and it's also just a comedy, just poking fun at bits of the culture too. So I think he's always done a really good job of that, and I've enjoyed pretty much everything he's done except Extract. I thought it was okay. Bobby does look like Cotton Hank's father though, says Dalton. Yeah, he does. Extract, have you seen that one with Jason Bateman? It's like he owns a Vanilla Extract family. I
don't think so.
It's okay. It's probably my least favorite one, but what really get to me are the Idiocracy and King of the Hill, and then Beavis and Butthead again, the new one. And I thought it was really good.
My main one probably King of the Hill. I know that one pretty well. I watched that one quite a bit. Beavis and Butthead just enough to know it. Idiocracy, seen the whole thing a couple times, but if you can get the gist of the whole movie in the first 4 minutes and 40 seconds would be my only. But like you said, he even said, I only made the movie so I could make that first 4 minutes and 40 seconds.
Well, we've had a lot going on in the news this past week, haven't we? The way to end in the month of June, we had Supreme Court. Sean says, "I'm not say Dale knew it and played it to keep his position." Yeah, that's my thinking too, Sean. I think
being the ignorant, whatever the reverse of a trophy wife would be, except he's not really a trophy. Yeah, she's getting screwed on both ends of the deal.
He gets to keep his trophy. Well, eventually Nancy does give it up with John, and she has to get a wig because the stress of not being with the man she's truly in love with causes her hair to fall out. But she stays with Dale because she feels like it's the right thing and convinces herself to do the right thing, I guess. Was that your taking on why she did it?
Yeah, well, she buys a wig because I don't even know if it was. Yeah, I guess that's a rough one to look at too. The fact that she has to, because she's doing it for Joseph essentially, right? She has to go bald essentially for her kid, So I guess maybe she's one of the better characters in the show.
Maybe she has a good point because her character arc does change somewhat.
She could totally just go back to getting her corner rated or whatever you want to call it.
My friend and I used to believe that every episode of Beavis and Butthead that they were just finished smoking weed before the episode. That's why they were so stupid and giggly. Yeah, I think that would make sense, Dalton. B says, every time I see Nancy, I can't think anything about how big her forehead must be. Yeah, her forehead is like up to here.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah.
Notice, before you even get to her hair that's so high, a low-flying bird once got stuck in it, as she brags in the episode where she loses her hair. But Nancy, she does have a different kind of character arc. When we get to the end of the series of King of the Hill, they actually it wasn't the season finale, right? They took the season finale and they aired it, and then they aired 2 more episodes after it. So I don't know why they did it that way. But when you see the show wind up, Hank and Bobby finally, find something in common that they have with grilling steak, and Bobby joins the meat grading team at Texas A&M, or no, I think he's at Arlen Community College or whatever. But he joins the meat grading team, and he and Hank bond over steak. And now there is in the works a King of the Hill reboot where we're going to be looking, I think, at Bobby as the main character. And he's an adult now.
He's racing like a 4chan gamer.
Yeah. Well, who knows? We can see it go a lot of different ways. Mike Judge is always good about surprising us as far as how he does that. But it's been talked about for a while. He's working with Greg Daniels again, who was also on The Office and Parks and Recreation. He's a writer for them. So if you're into that kind of dry humor, it definitely will be something you'll likely enjoy. I don't know. I'm kind of weary about it, though, or leery of it, because
everything gets ruined in modern day.
Yeah,
I don't get excited about sequels anymore. Every time a sequel or a remake or anything comes out, I'm like, oh, look what they're ruining next.
I will tell you though, with Beavis and Butthead, though, they went a different way. They touched on a lot of issues in society, like Beavis and Butthead find out, for example, in the preview that I saw of it before it said, well, I gotta watch the show. They find out that they have white privilege, and so they go to a college and they're telling them all about white privilege, and they're like, so wait a minute, I have white privilege and I can just go and take whatever I want, and the cops aren't going to chase me, and I can just I get whatever job I want, and my dad's rich and powerful, and so they go out and they just start walking all over everybody and taking everything they want. And they just see a cop car, they're like, let's jump in the cop car, and then they quickly find out that they actually don't have white privilege like they thought they do, or that doesn't mean what they thought it meant. And so I thought that was a pretty interesting take on it. And there's a lot of stuff like that in the film. They did a good job of keeping it current and keeping it relevant without really, trying to step on anybody's toes necessarily. Just saying, just poking fun at our society in general. I think he did a good job at it. Jimmy says, "Damn, I'm late again." Well, that's all right, Jimmy. We're talking about a little Mike Judge here. And we're talking about the new Beavis and Butthead film and the upcoming King of the Hill that should be out for too long. Like I said, I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm looking forward to watching it. So we'll see how it turns out. I've got high hopes for Mike Judge, though. He usually doesn't let me down. Like with he was also one of the first guys to predict a lot of the tech stuff, starting with Office Space. How he had the idea of these guys who worked in this office. They had the idea of when money is deposited, the pennies are rounded off, so they come in fractions of cents, and they decided that they would collect those fractions of cents into a bank account, and basically, since the company that they worked for wasn't going to do anything with them, that they would take that money, it wouldn't really be stealing. Well, then they accidentally, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Office Space, it's 30 years old, so it's time to watch it, but what happened is at the end, they end up stealing a whole lot more money than they meant to. They messed up somehow and stole a whole lot of money at once, but luckily Stephen Root's character, who also plays Bill Dauterive in King of the Hill, he plays Milton, I believe he had my stapler guy. He ends up burning the building down because they've pissed him off and he's disgruntled, and they've moved him down into the basement and taken all his stuff, and he finally can't take anymore and burns the place down.
So I think that's a good analogy for mistreated. There's workers, because I've worked in grocery stores and food places my whole life. What they'll do is a worker that does an important job but isn't one that's going to bother you unless it goes away. Those workers will take a little bit of poop and then they bottle it up, and then one day when you least suspect it, they go rogue and like cuss everybody out or something like that. And I thought that guy he bottled that message up and like encapsulated millions of people into one little poor guy. Was like, well, finally the thing that broke him was like, that's my fucking stapler. You know what I'm saying? You can move me all the way down here into the freezer, but you're not taking my stapler.
Yeah. And then at the end of it, he gets his stapler. I think we can all relate to, when they're taking the printer out and they're smashing it up, and God damn, it feels good to be a gangster, and smashing the
that's so
equipment with
well known. They even parodied that on Family Guy, and I'm pretty sure they parodied that on like Gumball.
Oh yeah, they
too.
did. Yeah, they did. I saw that when my kids were watching it, and they're like, "Y'all don't even know what this is." Yeah. Gumball is pretty hilarious now. I gotta say, they like push back against the culture war quite a bit. There was an episode of Gumball where this kid discovered that he could start using things like white privilege and saying, check your privilege to everybody, and he used it like a superpower to basically dominate the school, but then he overdid it and it stopped working. So I thought that was pretty good.
Have you seen the one where Darwin becomes the safety patrol thing and ends up like nerfing the whole city? And he starts like they give him the ability to like, they're like, oh, Darwin's right, we need to be safer about stuff, until they end up giving him so much authority that like the police are carrying balloons instead of batons, and like people are walking around town with like bumpers around their things so they can't bump into each other. And then when Gumball finds him, he's sitting down inside of a dungeon with like TVs of the whole town around him, dressed up in some kind of weird like M. Bison sort of dictator suit. Wow. And he goes, "Oh no, am I the bad guy?"
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff like that on that show. I was actually impressed by that, because a lot of the other shows that are on I think that one's on Cartoon Network, especially Disney, are going in a different way. You had a little something to say about Disney, didn't you?
Well, I'm going to do a whole episode on Disney at some point, but I mean, the spoiler alert on that one, it's really baffling for me that we have a track record of really crummy behavior, and it's not even like Joe Rogan tries to shut Eddie Bravo down on the NASA thing by saying, "Bro, it's different people. You're blaming a whole new group of people for behavior that one group did," and that might work for like a government agency. but it doesn't really apply to Disney in my opinion, because Disney's been doing like really grimy stuff all the way since their inception, and they're still doing grimy stuff all the way to 2022. So I just really wonder, and if you're, whichever camera I'm looking at, if you're just a lover of the culture and you just like to collect Funkos and you just like to see all the movies and you have no claim to anything, I ain't talking to you. I'm talking to specifically conservative, Christian, Muslim, any conservative person that has beef with a company that has literally said that if you have conservative values, we intend to destroy you, essentially, and you still go and take your kids to sit. Why would you let a man who says, I intend on diddling your son's asshole when you leave, would you let that man babysit your kid? And we let Disney do it every single day. Yeah. And they've straight up said, we're coming for your kids. And if you just like the culture, I'm not talking to you, but they really hate you as Christians, and I don't understand why you keep giving your money. And every day, every time there's a new video released, I keep seeing Christian after Christian on like Facebook and Instagram go to see the new whatever movie. It's like, why? They hate you. They literally hate you, and you keep giving them money and letting them raise your children. And so that one of these days, I'd like to do a very large presentation about how Disney has outright told you they hate your values and they intend to destroy them. So.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I don't have any of it specifically pulled up, but we could find some of that for that episode and show it. Now, they were in the news recently because they put out a new Lightyear movie. It was like Buzz Lightyear's backstory. I saw the preview for it when me and my kids went and watched the Bob's Burgers video. Now, Bob's Burgers it's not a Mike Judge, but it's a Fox animation, and it is more of a progressive show. But I actually appreciate that they don't beat you in the face with it, and they show you, like, it's kind of like we were talking about with the Drag Queen Story Hour. You asked me what would be wrong if a transgender person just came and read a kid's a story and there was nothing else said about it. They just read them a story and they went home.
I still agree with it.
Yeah, but I said the same thing. It's the sexualization, and it's I believe that the drag is an adult thing, and when you start taking it to kids, that's almost like taking a burlesque dancer to the school. I guess. But what I was going to say is Bob's Burgers, they do a pretty good job of just. Like, yeah, you do see one episode where the trans people are there and they go to like a drag club, but most of the time when you see a trans person, they're actually just existing. They're not doing anything sexual. They're not being, and so you see several things like that are kind of modern culture appearing in that show.
That Bronies episode.
Yeah, they did. That was pretty funny too. Jimmy says the shocker for me is that Boomhauer is a Texas Ranger. Yeah, and there's a theory
there was also a theory that he just did that to get laid.
Oh well, maybe the theory that I saw that made sense to me was that Boomhauer was actually there to spy on Dale, because the U.S. government had Dale on his radar.
Personal agent.
Yeah, and they sent Dale, Boomhauer, to stay close by to him, but Boomhauer knows he's harmless, so he said.
Well, they changed it at one point. Like in the early part of it, like was Boomhauer always went to school with them, but they later retconned it and they had Boomhauer did go to school with them. Because they ended up driving his car into the levee.
Well, they were in scouts together.
So they would have really have had to then plan some long.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Or maybe Boomhauer jumped on the chance for the assignment, is what the theory says, that he jumped on he says, hey, I know this guy, I can move right into the neighborhood, and
And he's been protecting him this whole time?
Yep.
He's totally done some stuff to get arrested.
Oh yeah, he sure has. That's the theory. But yeah, you were talking about Disney, and they do lots of things that a lot of conservatives don't like, but I will say, when I was talking about the Lightyear movie, it had a really bad box office weekend, it had really bad box office performance in general. A lot of people are attributing it to a gay kiss that was put in the movie. A lot of people saying that it was just put in there just to stick it in people's faces, so people didn't take their kids to watch it.
I do think a lot of that is what this is, like because what you've got pulled up on the screen here, I actually don't even have a problem with that.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
Just pay it forward, whatever there. Like, I saw a meme today where somebody had put, I'm sick of white men taking away the rights of minorities, but if I'm not mistaken, like, the big deciding vote was that Thomas guy who's a black fella, right? I mean,
well,
it's like,
on the Roe versus Wade, it was actually a 6-3 decision. A lot of people seem to be projecting their racism on to Clarence Thomas because
There's a lot of liberals saying
I've seen a lot of liberals saying the N word about race about Clarence Thomas and a lot of other things.
Called him Uncle something, Uncle Tom, or something
Uncle
like
Clarence,
that.
yeah.
Uncle Clarence.
And it was actually Samuel Alito is the one who wrote the opinion, and people are treating Clarence Thomas as it was a 6-3 vote. The 6 conservative justices, including John Roberts, actually voted to overturn Roe versus Wade, and then the 3 liberal justices voted against it. But a lot of people, I think, because it's a really nuanced conversation, because we had another big Supreme Court decision this week too, deciding that in New York that the state could not ask you to provide a cause of why you have to have a reason, or telling you have to have a reason to carry a concealed weapon. If you want to apply for a license, they're supposed to put in the requirements in place into law and then give you a chance to get a concealed carry license. They can't say, why do you need it? Just the fact they said that that's unconstitutional. And we get into a little area of nuance here, because we were talking on several episodes ago how there was the precedent that the First and Second Amendment basically were nationwide and all the rest of them were up to the states, and that the states could violate certain laws but not the First and Second Amendment, right? So now we see that they overturned Roe versus Wade, saying that it's a 14th Amendment issue, that was a fallacious argument.
Should be by the state.
That the 14th Amendment issue basically legalized it in the original decision nationwide when it really should have been a state decision. But then they kind of said the opposite thing with the gun decision. They said, New York can't stop people from carrying arms in public because the right to keep and bear arms is absolute. And I've always been of the opinion, I thought the 14th Amendment was kind of a bad one, because one of the whole purposes of the United States was to get rid of the central authority and have a republic of states who were basically their own independent nation states who came together for national defense and for,
Fed straight nullifies all the variety of the states.
Right.
It effectively mushes them down into watered down versions of what they should be.
Yeah.
And that's not an advocacy for
one
a
way
stance
or another,
on pro-choice or pro-life or anything. That's just the Fed really does. If the Fed says no to something, that keeps all the states from being one way or the other. It really limits choice. Before we move on from this and go on to the Watauga thing that you're talking about, I have a theory, and if I'm about to kill your flow of thought,
No, he'll.
I'm never going to discuss abortion. I just don't. I'm not. I'm a dude. I don't want to. I don't care. It's just. I don't want to discuss it, but because I feel like every time we bring up topics, there's always like an issue that I feel like people aren't seeing, and so instead of me contributing to one side or the other and something like that, I'd rather point out what I think is actually going on, which I would be called it's almost like a release valve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so right now you have lockdown-induced exiles. Exodus is all over the place. People moving from one spot to the other. And the big argument that I've been hearing for a long time from both sides is the Blues don't want the Reds coming there, and the Reds don't want the Blues coming, vice versa. And what is the? First of all, we had Roe v. Wade turned over under a Democrat rule, by the way, and is that not absurd? And second of all, what timing? So what if this is like a release valve sort of thing? Like, what is more divisive than guns and stuff than abortion? So let's illegalize it federally. That way the states really can choose now. And some of them definitely are. And so I think a lot of those red people might definitely go to Alabama, because Alabama's got one abortion clinic. It's definitely going to be illegal there.
A lot of states, including Tennessee, have a trigger law basically that was in effect saying if, they had abortion banned before Roe versus Wade, right? It was a state-to-state issue where there were certain states.
So is Tennessee going to? So
Tennessee in 30 days is going to be, I think, an abortion-free state or a legal abortion-free state. A lot of people make the argument that just like guns, you can't totally ban abortions either. People will go elsewhere and get them, or people will get them illegally, and
illegally.
I don't think really. I don't think
they're close enough.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't think there's going to be an epidemic. I'm sure. I mean, there's cases of all these things, but don't think there's going to be an epidemic of women going into back alleys and coat hangers, because there are places where you can go get an abortion, and we're seeing things like this. Disney offering to pay employees abortion-related travel costs after SCOTUS ruling. And not only Disney, but I've also seen, I think, Starbucks, Dick's Sporting Goods have also made similar arguments or similar offers to their employees. And here, the first thing I thought when I heard this is what George Alexopoulos here says, G Prime on Twitter here. George says, he shows the comic, "I can't afford to travel to another state for an abortion." And her boss says, "Don't worry, we'll pay for the whole thing." The girl says, "You will?" And he says, "Of course. We need you back on Monday to serve peppermint frappes with mocha flakes to hordes of teenagers with rich parents." So the idea is basically they would much rather pay you a few $4,000 or whatever it is to
Go not have
to travel an abortion, so then they would have you on maternity leave for 3 months or whatever, and and they don't want to lose that productivity, so of course those companies are ready to do that. But we also see I saw a report on Friday. I don't know if anything ever came of this, but they were saying that Google would relocate people who did not have reproductive care, as they called it, where they lived. So it's just like what you were saying. It's kind of a pressure valve, and I think we're seeing
that because Google's primarily out of California.
I think we're seeing a balkanization of the states, like we talked about in the episode where we talked civil war versus peaceful divorce, and this could be one step in that direction or another. Like, it's hard to know which way it'll go, but we're definitely getting a divide, and people are saying, okay, well, if abortion is not illegal in this state, well, that's where I'm going to go. And people say, well, this state is banning abortion, so that's where I want to go. And then we also see things like the Pentagon. Get this shit. You want to talk about, what led to the Civil War ultimately, what led to a lot of secession. I mean, there were many factors, but one of the things that was the final straw for the Confederacy was they had the fugitive slave law. And when fugitive slaves, when people got away and went to the North, where don't get me wrong, slavery was still happening in the North too, up until after the end of the war even. But the fugitive slave law said that if they found a slave who had escaped from the South, that the North had an agreement that they were going to return them. Well, they weren't doing that. So that was one of the last straws for the South, who said, well, if you're not going to follow the law that we both agreed to, then there is no law. And that's why we're seceding. It was, like I said, it was a very multifaceted issue, a lot of things leading up to it, but that was ultimately what led to many states finally seceding. And then a few states seceding, and then you had Lincoln. He actually said, well, no, you guys have the military bases, we're coming in and getting those. And then the fighting started at Fort Sumter. And then when the southern states saw that Lincoln had invaded the South, that's what led most of the rest of them to secede. We got some chats here. Jimmy and Dalton are talking about, let's see, Dalton's in Pennsylvania, Johnson City, Jimmy's in Johnson City. And they said it's good area for camping and riding motorcycles. And Dalton says he's been coming every summer since he was born. So yeah, lots of stuff there. Get in that chat and talk to each other too.
I played Banner Elk this weekend, and I did not realize it was this little tiny little bar thing. So I see out the window, there's a place where they take inner tubing, and there was probably 12 busloads, school bus size busloads of people coming and going from that place. Inner tubing must be really, really.
It's fun.
It really is bumping business up in Banner Elk.
Well, the Pentagon has stated, from Breaking News Newsroom, the Pentagon has stated that any abortion laws enacted as a result of Supreme Court's decision will not be recognized. So I think this is a really big deal, guys. I think we're seeing the beginning of what could be either the national divorce or the Civil War, because this it kind of seems. I always heard like that. Why
did the Pentagon need to make a statement?
Well, I don't know, but listen, this is the federal government saying we are disregarding the judiciary branch. Now, the judiciary is supposed to be a safeguard to make sure that the government does not enact laws that violate the Constitution. The government has, the judicial branch has said the Roe versus Wade decision actually violated the Constitution and therefore had to be overturned. Well, now the Constitution, the only reason I even bring it up is not because I'm some lover of the Constitution, but the government operates under the framework of this document. And I've said I'm an anarchist. I prefer no government. But if the government that you live under doesn't follow the rules that it sets for itself, then how can you be expected to follow those rules? And how do you know what rules the government is going to follow? If it doesn't follow the literal rules for the foundation of the country, then how can it be held to any standard? How do you know it will? I mean, it's basically twisting at the wind at that point. It seems illegitimate to me if it decides that, well, this is what this branch of the government has decided, and we're not going to follow that. I think it's leading for a really bad place to have something like
I just
happen.
don't understand like where it would go, why the Pentagon would even need to say something.
Well,
The Pentagon's pretty much just saying like,
they're letting you know where they stand is what they're doing.
how are you going to virtue signal?
They're
like,
letting you know what side they're on.
Yeah, but it's I know what you're saying, but what I'm saying is the Pentagon is not representative of fill in the blank number of military soldiers. The Pentagon's Instagram account or whatever you're showing is representative of a dozen people that are worried
But
about.
that's who called the shots at the Pentagon, or the Pentagon is what I'm saying.
It's a Freudian.
Yeah, you said pentagram first, so you
Well, I did it on
flipped
purpose
it, and
sometimes.
then I flipped it too. But he says nothing more. Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, says nothing is more important to me or this department than the health and well-being of our service members. I am committed to taking care of our people and ensuring the readiness and resilience of our force. The department is examining the decision closely and evaluating our policies to ensure we continue to provide seamless access to reproductive health care as permitted by federal. So basically, if you live in a state where they ban it, the Pentagon is probably going to send you to another state where they do allow
but let's not look. Okay, here's my point.
This is very
the way
combative.
they've got this up here. They've made this look like, because this is what they do. The Pentagon is not going to support abortion. Boots come a marching. Ding, 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 ding. That's why they've got this framed. And really, what it sounds like they're saying to me when you read the whole thing is, "Hey, if female soldiers want an abortion, we're going to provide that for them."
Yeah, they're going to move them to a place where it could be basically, yeah. Or any policy. They don't have any policy yet, but they're going to look at how they can send female soldiers who want an abortion to somewhere else.
Well, yeah, they can totally do that.
And yeah, it's going to be legal. So, but it's the way it's put it right here.
Do you think there's any states where they've got bases that would go illegal? If you can think of any right off the bat.
No, I have no
idea. Is
idea.
Texas going to go illegal?
I have no idea. But the point is, it's being framed as
Clarksville has a base.
It's being framed as we will ignore the government when basically it is.
Are they ignoring it though? Because if they
that's what I'm saying.
To send somebody
that's
else
what I'm saying. That's the way it's being framed. Is we are going to ignore the law.
Is the government doing this, or is the media framing it this way?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, it could just be the New York Post here or BNN News.
Is you've got growing pains of society, and like if we're going to go switch to a state, because laws change. If we're going to switch to a system for a while where some states this is legal and some states it's not, we're going to treat abortion like it's weed or something. The Pentagon has every right as an employer to send their female soldiers out of, let's say, Tennessee. If you say Tennessee is going to go abortion illegal in 30 days, there is a base in Clarksville, Tennessee, where there is soldiers stationed. So that would be one of them, right? So
they send them to California or somewhere. No, that wouldn't be illegal, but that's the way this is.
Well, Virginia won't go.
But basically, the way this is it's making it out that the Pentagon is choosing sides, and the Pentagon spokesperson, it seems like he has put that out there.
Aren't they allowed to though? Aren't they allowed to choose sides?
Well,
though?
I mean, they're the federal government, so I guess they could.
But I mean, it's the federal government. It's also, if there wasn't a federal government, you're still going to have different branches of the U.S. Army, like if we're supposed to choose the sides, can we have pregnant soldiers? I mean, we can't, can we?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of pregnant soldiers. That's a lot of people's criticisms of having women in the military to begin with, is they get up, especially on naval vessels, is they end up going out and getting pregnant, and there's a whole lot of rapes and a whole lot of pregnancies. So, I mean...
Yeah, but that shouldn't be on the women to not go to the military because they might get raped. That should be on the dude to not rape his...
Well, perhaps so, but at the same time, it's human nature. It's not necessarily even rape either. It's also when you put women into a group of sailors, young sailors, you put young people. Remember, these military people are between 17 and 21 years old. Well, that's not a good thing, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions who are in the military too, because you have something that's a dangerous situation already, and then you add sex in the middle of it, and you have jealousy, you have people getting pregnant. I'm not in the military, so I can't say one way or the other. I'm just saying that's what a lot of people in the military are saying.
I have had many years of military training.
Okay.
Many years. It started back in the days of Command and Conquer. with Windows XP. I can basically speak with such an authority on this. Everybody in the chat can just understand that this is real. That we have two options here. Women get to stay in the military. Damn it. One, we only let lesbians into the military. Or chastity belts for protection, of course. That's going to be real weird running around the naval ship like all bow-legged, like you've got a toilet rim.
I don't have a problem with women in the military, but when you have men and women together on long...
Yeah, but shouldn't that be a psych test that if guys are going to be aggressive towards their female officers?
It's not even the aggression. It is just human nature that they're fucking too much. Yes, and that people get jealous. Well, it's caused a lot of problems for people in the service. That's not my opinion. That's just me parroting what I've heard.
With comedy, I know people. I don't think if you maybe the effect would be worse because there's women there, but I think prisons show that you can make something pretty unisex and it's still gonna have some rubbing and some.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, like you see a lot of the they put in some of these transgender women, who are, men who have identified as women, into a women's prison, and then suddenly their women are getting pregnant in the prison, and they're like, oh, this woman is getting all these other women pregnant in this prison.
Well, she's lesbian. Of course she is. Yeah. She can't help it that she's got semen.
But we also had the in addition to the Roe versus Wade decision, which is going to be a big deal. I mean, there've been some small protests, and I think there were people who went into the Arizona state legislature while they were in session, and a lot of people are saying it's an insurrection. A lot of people are saying it's a protest. We're going to see more of this. It's going to really divide the country, I think, more. And we already saw when the Supreme Court opinion was leaked about 2 months ago. We already saw this was going to be a big deal, and we saw where the media was trying to push it. And now that the decision is here, yeah, it was leaked.
Given.
Yeah, it was given, yes, by somebody who works in the court. Yeah, it's almost like it was to divide. So who knows? But we've also got a few other things to look at here. We've got
this right here. I have to call back. I'm pretty sure this was either 2012. I'm pretty sure this was 2012.
These are the trans flags here, folks. I'm not sure what all these colors mean.
When you show this, I don't even know what part of the subject we're on. I guess we're on topic. There was a joke. There's a streamer, one of the godfathers of the internet. His name's Mr. Mediker. Mm-hmm. He made a joke a long time ago that said people are going to. Well, I'm going to misquote this, but it's something to the extent of. Keep in mind, this guy's not a Republican. He's a pretty liberal dude. He's just not an idiot in most ways. He made a joke that said, I guess people aren't going to understand what depravity the left is really falling into until they're going to have to go to civil war with the gay army. Yeah. And he was saying, that was it, the gay Nazi army. Mm-hmm. Because he was essentially saying that they're being turned into gay Nazis. I mean, like, not by name, it's not nominal, but it's definitely in behavior.
Well, if you look, you see you see that's the defining ideology. Everybody has to bow down to that. If you don't, like, personally, I don't have any problem with gay people or trans people. I don't particularly like sexualization in public, and I definitely don't like sexualization of children, whether it be by straight or trans people. It just seems like that the ones making the news, at least most often lately, are the trans and gay people. But there's definitely straight people who sexualize children, and they should be punished for that too. And most of the time when they are punished, it's the other inmates that really do the punishment that stops them from engaging in the behavior anymore.
I know this is. I like to make analogies for other things. Mm-hmm. I really feel like the gay community, I will call it LGBT. Mm-hmm. They got hoodwinked at some point into being so inclusive. And this isn't it, but I mean, you can look at the LGBT community online and see that it's very fractured right now. It's not
there's a lot of them who don't want to take in.
It's not one giant group that's that they're trying to relabel them maps.
And if you see this, guys, every color on this flag stands for a different something or another. I'm not sure what.
Well, I mean, I don't have a problem with that if like.
No, I'm just saying that's a large. If you have to
group up, but what I'm saying is like they have to keep making new groups of people, because they keep pushing people out. Like a TERF was not a thing until
trans exclusionary radical feminists.
Right, and that is an opinion a belief system held by a section of the feminists that are now shunned from the LGBT. They're not allowed to be a part of it. And they keep making their more and more numbers letters keep getting added to it, and the group is actually getting smaller, and that's what people don't really understand.
And you have to look at it as they traditionally they say that gay and trans and lesbian are about 3% of the population. And then here recently that the number has been going higher. And some people argue that that's because people were afraid of coming out in the past, and that's why people feel more...
Cultural acceptance and also roles that you're allowed to accept. Like, it would be way harder for a gritty farmer back in the 1910s to explore his sexuality and maybe be bi-curious. He was too busy feeding the hogs and taking care of the kids and stuff.
And if he had done that, then townspeople, he would be shunned if he had done that. And it's become more acceptable socially to be gay or to dress like a woman. But at the same time, I feel like there's something else going on. I feel like it's a cultural force that is pushing people in that direction. I feel like I can
explain it in psychological terms versus an individual community, but you're going to have to bear with me. Feel free to interrupt me and ask questions. The LGBT is going to have to do a purge, and they are. I'm not speaking for them. They're doing it right now if you read a lot of the threads and you watch videos and stuff. The early days of furrdom.
You always go back to the furries with us.
Dude, furries, because it's huge. It's a giant community, because people think of furries as just the people in mascots, but that's like the most mainstream one is a brony, of course. What people don't know is the furries do predate the internet, right? The reason I love the furry community so much is because it's such a deep dive into psychology. It is like an abnormal psych holiday, because so many people are just open about it. You can look at the normal side of them and then see that kink side of them. The furrdom did not start out as a sexual thing, just like how we were talking about how the gay community a couple episodes ago, we were talking about how would the current gay community be as flamboyant and perverted as it is if it was not so heavily suppressed? Right. Like wouldn't gay and trans people just be, however they would be, rather than shaking their ass in front of...
That's why there's the pride thing, is because it was suppressed for so long.
Suppressed, so if you suppress something really heavily, thus, that's why you have dudes shaking their dick in 4-year-olds' faces going, you gotta accept me, Well, with that same sort of thing, the fur people, in the early days of that whole thing, it started out with what they called, funny animal lovers. It was more about adults that just remembered growing up with cartoons, so now they wanted to kind of get together, because this is like early 80s, late 70s, and it was kind of like frowned upon for you to still be into cartoons, is what they were saying. And so they started getting together and be like, hey, look at this cool rat I drew. But after a while, they started to realize they were attracting some people that liked more the adult side of it, where the rat started having some booty. For example, one of the biggest idols in the furrdom is Gadget from the Rescue Rangers. There's a huge cult of it's not huge. There's a cult of Gadget in Russia. So it's such a deep dive into people's psychology. But the whole point of it wasn't always sexual. Right. There's this whole thing you can call it's like the Furry Manifesto or something like that, where a whole group of them got together and like, look, we tried to have a furry convention, and there's semen in the elevators. Turns out there was a guy giving head in the elevator. And they were talking about how we didn't intend, when we wanted to dress up like stuffed animals and have talent competitions, to be auctioning off people dressed up for sex later on. It just turned, once they became so inclusive, and this is where I was going at with the playground thing. I was talking about.
I was going to get back to that too, so good.
Once you become so inclusive to everybody that you allow deviance, because you're the trans, lesbians, gays, furrdom, any of these communities that you want, it doesn't have to get deviant. And to be honest with you, I think it's allowed to be deviant. It just doesn't have to be in front of kids' faces.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, deviance is part of the big fun of it, and deviance has been a big part of society for a long time, but it's generally kept in a place where it's out of mainstream society. And you were talking about how they've become so inclusive that they're even, and that was where I was getting to, with it being such a small percentage of the population, from somewhere, let's say, between 3 and 10%. If we go to, I think they say the Zoomers are somewhere like 15 to 20%, whether it be, queer or whatever these different, I don't really know what all these different things that are in the rainbow are, but there's something different and they all identify as something different. And I think a lot of that is cultural and has to do with that being a way to be unique and to be accepted as this is a brave way for me to be unique, is to announce that I'm a non-binary person. Or
Not unique at all.
well, I know, but that's what it started out as, and now it's almost like it was people getting attention for doing something different, and it's just kind of like when everybody starts seeing something is getting other people attention, they start piling on to it, and I think that's a certain amount of it.
It attracts a lack of genuineness. What's the word I'm looking for? You're not genuine. If your group starts attracting things based for clout only, and you attract people that aren't in it true, they're just doing it for clout, it's not genuine, and eventually it turns cancerous, which goes back to the furry thing for just a minute to kind of prove my point with the LGBT thing, which you was talking about. They tried to separate out. Like they tried to go back, hey, we're going to go over here and do this own group where there's no sex involved in it, but it became so puritanical when really there was a middle ground that people really wanted, that it just never took off because they didn't understand that, because while they were taking that same stance of no more sexuality in our fur community, they also took the stance of all kinds of like crazy like overly right-wing stuff, and it offended a lot of people, and so the group never took off. But that's kind of what I'm getting to. Everybody thinks of, maybe not mainstream people, because they don't know how deviant the furry community can really be. If you really look that up, just look up, was it DashCon or was it the other one? At a convention, you could really look how bad. Rainforest. That was the one that the internet really found out how kind of gross furries could be. But my whole point is, like, it's deviance. If you can get the sex out of it, like, or just at least behind closed doors, like, I really don't have a problem with it.
I don't care what anybody does, be honest, as long as you're not hurting anyone.
What's with the dicks in the library? Like, you've seen the pic, right? Trans story time. It's like, all right, some guy in drag is going to come read a story. It's literally a dude in the most, like, vulgar princess gown that a person could put on with a crown made of dildos.
Wanting to bounce the little children on their
and it's like,
laps.
Why does this have to be the thing? Why couldn't it be one of the ones that they're always representing in Hollywood? It always turns out to be some guy that is trying to just touch children, and it makes me think. And a lot of times
they get caught, and like people will stake these things out, stake out like the story hours, and find out who their real identities are, and turns out they're on the sex registry for having hurt children in some way before, and that's where I was getting into. With the inclusivity of this community, it's inherently inclusive because these are always all people who have had trouble finding acceptance in mainstream society. So when they find other people who have also had that same trouble, they kind of are drawn to one another and they feel inclined to accept one another. But then you have so many people who shouldn't be accepted by mainstream society who are also drawn towards that, and there's a pressure to accept them, and then you end up with a flag who's accepting of everybody with all these different cultures on it. And I think they take in like the black and brown because they've realized, well, there's only 3 to 10% of us in this voting block. If we want to actually have a force behind us at the ballot box, we have to have more people in this movement. So that's why they are trying to include, black and brown people. But a lot of Latinos, a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Puerto Ricans are very conservative. And so a lot of them, there was the idea, and this has been in the news lately, of the great replacement theory, where this person up in Buffalo, he had the idea that there was a great replacement coming, and he had the idea that all the whites were going to be replaced by people of other descents. But it's like, where did he get this? We've seen for years in the media saying that the Hispanic population is growing, they're becoming a bigger voting bloc, and we see pushing for what they call the Reconquista, and people saying that actually California belongs to Mexico and that we should give it back to them, and that
at this point I think they can have it.
And you also have a lot of Democrats saying things like, well, when all you old white men die off, we're going to replace you with people of other races and descents. So
who aren't Democrats is the thing.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Yeah, is that a lot of these people are conservative, and they thought, both the Republicans and the Democrats have thought consistently that they could count on these people from Mexico to come up and vote for Democrats because of the welfare system, right? But it turns out that Mexicans actually have pretty conservative values, and once they get up here and they get on the social programs, they see that there's a price to be paid for that, and it goes against their values. So a lot of them have been changing their minds. So we've seen some turmoil in that community, as they've tried to be more inclusive, they've had a lot of divisiveness.
I know, I'll just spare you, I'll get straight to the thing. I know someone who said they saw in a group, I think it was like maybe a travel group or something like that, a Latina was wanting to travel to Texas from Colorado to do some kind of something or another, and they were worried. They were asking the group, am I going to be discriminated against when I get to Texas? I hear it's a pretty right-leaning state. To which the whole group exploded. You do realize we're all Mexicans here because the border moved across us. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so people have this idea that like minority means Democrat, and it's like, well, I hate to tell you this, Mexican descent is not the minority in Texas. It's actually quite the majority, and they're Republicans. You know, it's not the whiteys down in Texas that are keeping it red. You know. And I think that's one of the points I'd like to keep getting, like the poor women that are like mad at white men. Man, there's a lot of women that are against the Roe v. Wade. So I think you need to take on your own sex.
We just saw the first Mexican American woman win a congressional seat in Texas. Maya Flores. She won a Biden district. I think Biden won it by 54%. And she won it by 80% of the vote, and she's a Republican, and so that was kind of historic for Texas, and it shows a change in the tides there. Let's read a couple of chats here. We got a little bit behind. Dalton says, "I like both your shirts." Jimmy says, "I know this is off subject, but what's your take on Skinwalker Ranch? Just curious." I don't know. I watched the show with B, and it kind of just seems like another one of those where they're like, I don't know. It reminds me of the Oak Island show where it's just kind of like they.
The Mystery of Oak Island. I haven't seen any shows about Skinwalker Ranch. I've seen shows.
I mean, it's fun to watch and it's interesting, but it's almost like it seems like they set it up. Now, I've seen things that have it that, defy explanation. Don't get me wrong, but I'm honestly not well versed in it enough to really have an opinion other than that one show seems like it's pretty sensationalized for what's actually happened. And it can't seem like they make a big deal out of a lot of things.
Well,
but
I'm sure Stranger Things is sensationalized too, surely.
Not true. Dalton says poop is hitting the fan and it's getting everywhere and it's stinking. He also says people from India are usually conservative, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what we're getting around to tonight is the poop is hitting the fan and nobody knows which way it's going to fly, but it looks like it's going to fly all over all of us. Well, we all have our ideas, but it looks like we are seeing a balkanization of the United States, and a lot of people say it's a good thing, and a lot of people say it's a bad thing. But
it's inevitable.
We're seeing, we're living in different cultures. If you just take the abortion issue at one, you take one side, you've got the right-wing side is that this is human life. All human life must be protected, and a lot of they have different views from life begins at conception to life begins at heartbeat to, but most people in America actually, the majority of people believe that once a child is out of the first trimester, that it's even pro-choice people, most of them believe that up until the end of the first trimester, that it's okay, but after that it's barbaric because you're looking at a child who can think and feel and, who has a heartbeat, who could be viable. So it's not a really popular position to have abortions after that, but that is the law in some places. In some places they are advocating up until the moment of birth that the mother can decide that she wants to abort the fetus, and that's what most people are fighting back against is they don't believe that that's right. But what's funny is that's even most pro-choice people don't believe in that. But those are the laws that are still being attempted to be passed, and that's why it's getting the backlash that it is. But when you look right down to it, the right wing believes that they're protecting an innocent life, and the left wing believes that it's not a human life, and that you're just shackling this mother, and and making her basically a brood mare for the state, or that you're putting her into bondage. So both sides have an extreme view. Then they look at it totally differently, right? So they're looking at it from different perspectives altogether.
I think they're both looking at it the way they want to, though.
But my point is, you're not going to bring these two sides together on this issue because they're both looking at it from totally different perspectives, and they're not willing to look at the other side's perspectives. So rather than to have a compromise on it, we're going to have balkanization. We're going to have places like Tennessee where they say there's no abortion allowed, and then you're going to have places like Virginia, I think, will probably be more of a first trimester state. because they are kind of purple there in the middle. But you had their governor, Ralph Northam, who was advocating that maybe we would even look at killing a baby after it was born if the mother decided that she didn't want it anymore. So that's pretty much in the other extreme from what Tennessee has. So I think we'll have different versions of that all over the state, all over the United States. And the problem will come when people decide in Tennessee that they don't like what they're doing in New York, for example, and to decide to try to do something about it rather than taking care of Tennessee. And when people in New York decide the same thing, like you saw in Texas when they had, they basically made it where you could sue, the state could sue the abortion providers if they performed abortions. Well, you had lots of people in New York chiming in on that and, trying to affect that decision. But the people of New York don't want the people of Texas to chime in on their decision on whether or not they have guns on, carry permits easily available. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a weird position that we're in, because the court has decided that it's okay for the federal government to say across the board you cannot stop people from carrying guns, but the federal government has said across the board you do not have to allow abortion. So it's like a lot of people look at that as a right, and then a lot of people don't look at it as a right. But the court has said it's up to each state. But then with guns, they've said, I guess because it's in the Second Amendment, that everybody has to follow this. Do you think that's what it is? What do you think the difference is between abortion and guns in the eyes of the court? That's what I don't know.
The way they decide to spin it.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's basically what it boils down to.
I guess that's why I have issue talking about the big, however many numbers like there are. Like, I have trouble talking about guns and abortion, all these things, because there's such clouded issues. People can't talk about them reasonably. Like, I don't even want to give my opinion because it's automatically going to make half our audience go this way or this way with me. And it's a... Like with the gun thing, I really am indifferent to guns. I recognize that... but my big opinion on gun is like... Okay, I guess here's a good way of putting it. My issue is usually not with the topic at hand. My issue is usually how we're deciding to deal with the topic at hand. Like, for example, guns. Like, let's take the opinion whether you support guns or not, whether you think people should have them, right? The way they try to go about gun control does not make any sense, and that's what I get beefy about. Like, it doesn't make sense to do it the way they try to fix gun laws and stuff, right? Like I think it was one of the very first episodes you did. You had the top view of the radar detector, and you could just see the tire tracks going around the pressure point, so people couldn't take pictures of the license plate. They said this is how gun laws work. People that are obeying the laws do 45 through, and the people that want to speed just go in the grass around it. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, my issue with abortion, the reason I get all I don't even want to talk about it, is because people don't talk about it. They just argue about it.
That's what I was going to say.
That's not how. Like, it's like we always jump to like a crazy conclusion. Like I said, like I saw a girl posting today that said, thanks to the decision of white men across the world, women are going to suffer. And I was like, I think you need to be blaming a lot of women too, because there's a lot, like most of the outspoken people I see on social media right now, besides some of the not so bright men that just need to keep their mouths shut, are women. And like, I'm sorry, they're quoting scripture. I know you don't like that. But don't blame white men when you've got black people on the Supreme Court and you've got Mexican ladies in the street advocating for pro-life and stuff. It's just a weird.
I think everybody has the right for an opinion. I mean, because whether I'm a man or a woman, obviously I don't have the same perspective as a woman. But a lot of people they'll say, well, this man, he wants to ban abortion because he's trying to control women's bodies. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times that man will genuinely believe that is a human life and thinks that murder is wrong. And if you abort that child, you're murdering it. Okay. So, whereas the person on the opposite end of it, they say, no, that's not a human life. It's just a clump of cells. So how are you going to, condemn a woman to a life of slavery by raising this child that she doesn't want to keep? Because it's not a child yet. It's going to be a child one day, and it will take over her life. So you're looking at it from two different perspectives, and to say neither of them has a right to have that opinion because they're one gender or another, I think is not fair. But I think we just need to look at. Again, I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion here on this show or in this society. So
I think we could, but we're very selfish.
I think maybe the way that we're doing it right now is probably the preferable way if we can do it without, getting violent, basically, is let's have everybody who agrees with this on this issue. If it's important enough to you to get an abortion, to be able to have an abortion, then, you know, maybe move to a state where or work to get it changed.
Maybe I'm going to sound like the old dude that doesn't understand how the DVD player works, and I say this, but let's say Roe v. Wade completely passes, and you have, let's make up an arbitrary number. Let's say you have 25 states that are where you can't have an abortion, and 25 that you can.
Okay.
Like, and you as a female get pregnant, and you're like, damn, I guess I'm going to 3 hours across the state line. You go do your thing. Like, I understand the frustration. That's a huge inconvenience. That's a pain in the ass, and your rights are being trampled on. But, like, how many abortions do you need to have to leave the state of Tennessee? You say it's not even like, let's take another one, like pot was legalized. Like, I could see people, I have panic attacks if I don't have my weed. Like, I'm moving to Colorado, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can kind of see that. But how many abortions are you going to need that you need to relocate states unless you're just doing it out of anger? But I swear, I really think a lot of women are going to do it out of anger. Probably men, too.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, I'm not going to live in a state that's going to attack, because I keep seeing a lot of, like, people post, I will not go peacefully back to the 1950s and stuff like that.
But again, I think that was the original idea for the state, and that moves more towards my place of anarchy is that localized control is the next step to anarchy, basically, in my opinion, and or to having less state or a stateless society or more individuality is the idea. As I explained on the last episode, if you weren't here, anarchy is not necessarily just burning buildings and smashing cars. It's the lack of a state, and the individual is capable of making their own decisions in most circumstances. Let's see, we got some chats here. Dalton says the option to have abortion may lead more risky behavior because women won't be as afraid of getting unwanted pregnancy. Well, that's one of the reasons that they advocate for it. Yes.
Yeah, I think that comes down to personal responsibility too. Like, I really think a lot of the problems that we have in today's society is we're not very we don't like to take personal responsibility for anything. And that's not me making an argument against abortion. I don't think that's a good argument. These naughty girls might misbehave, you know, if they're, you know, if they know they can't get pregnant, because shouldn't birth control take
guys will do that too. Well, guys will, you know, he's a lot more likely to blow a load somewhere.
If you had like a little red switch, you could turn it off, you know, like that's a Bill Gates device.
Yeah.
The nut button.
Well, again, we're not going to decide this tonight or anything, but it's definitely something we're going to be watching going forward. We're going to see, I think, more
I don't think we're ever going to decide. I guess my biggest issue is I don't like the way the people that are in charge decide how we're going to talk about it. And I don't like how they decide that we're going to fix problems. They don't make sense. It seems deliberate, or they're stupid. Maybe we live in idiocracy already, you know?
Again, I think we'll see people who that's an important right to them will move to a place where it's accessible. And again, Google was talking about relocating people. Companies were talking about paying traveling expenses. So if that's important to you, it's something you're still going to be able to do. And the main point of me looking at these issues is tonight because we had such different applications of the law with regard to the gun. For instance, I'm for anybody and everybody that wants to be able to defend themselves to be able to do so. And not only that, I'm for the ability of the people to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. But at the same time, if you're going to have a government and it doesn't follow the law, then what's the point in having it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
agree with you on that.
And the law seems to be that each state could decide this on their own until the 14th Amendment, and then it was decided that one state having and I don't agree with that, but it just says that one state having no person in one state that everybody gets the same rights in all the states, basically, is what the 14th Amendment says. And that's how they used it to determine that gay marriage was legal in all states. And that's where some people are looking at.
For that one next.
That's what some people are saying because Clarence Thomas
I don't
did
think
mention
I have
that.
a leg to stand on that one with, though. That's just a legal contract is different than bringing a human life into the world.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, I don't know.
Again, I don't think the state should ever
really
been in
see
the
this
business of marriage.
as the valve theory. I really think that's they're trying to squeeze people to different areas, and I think there's very few topics that you could bring up other than, you know, abortion that would cause people to relocate.
Abortion
I
and
really
guns.
think they will, though.
Yep, and I think they're separating us, and it just remains to be seen whether or not it is going to be peaceful or not. I think that's what it really boils down to.
Well, it's not going to be much of a civil war when the people that want that move out of state for abortion also go to the states that are kind of in a third world state, and they're also anti-gun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, we don't know which way. I mean, warfare's taken on we're in a different generation of warfare with technological warfare, so we don't really know what a civil war might look like in today's age. It's definitely not going to be the same. It's not going to be General Sherman burning Atlanta necessarily, not although it could be. But there's we got on to fourth and fifth generation warfare. So who knows which way it's going to go, and I think it's going to have a lawfare direction and a technological direction. So we'll just have to watch how it goes. I mean, because there's always going to be something else. Let's see which way it goes. And I wanted to talk about the Watauga Association real quick, because ultimately what this comes down to is self-determination. Mm-hmm. And the Watauga Association was formed 250 years ago in 1772 in Carter County, Tennessee. And it was founded by frontier settlers along the Watauga River, and they actually have, by the Doe River, there's a stump from the tree that they sat under when they formed this government. And it was actually the first government west of the Appalachian Mountains. And these were citizens who had gone over from North Carolina and gone over the mountains, and they had a lease with the Cherokee for like 10 years. But whenever this happened, it was illegal for people to settle on that side of the mountains by decree of I don't remember if it's the king or parliament, but either way, people weren't supposed to settle over there. But these guys went over and they formed an independent government, although it was never claimed, I don't think, to be sovereign territory or outside the territory of the British Crown. But it was basically that these people were cut off from the rest of their society, so they decided to form a governing body here in Tennessee. And it ended up leading to the founding of Carter County, when it was Washington County, North Carolina at the time, but when Tennessee became a state after the failure of the state of Franklin, then Elizabethton became the county seat of Carter County. Carter County was formed, and on the banks of the Watauga River, where the Watauga Association was. So we saw in the episode I talked about, we've talked about this a little bit before, where we got into the Battle of Kings Mountain and the Over Mountain Men. And these were the people who settled this area, who would go on to fight Major Patrick Ferguson at the Battle of Kings Mountain, and basically turn the tide of the Revolutionary War by cutting Cornwallis off from his supplies and causing him to have to reroute. It actually stopped him from being able to flank General George Washington, which allowed, or I'm sorry, not General George Washington, but stopped him from being at the battles of Lexington and Concord, which ended up turning the whole tide of the war. So it was a pretty key moment in that time. And shortly after this, after we had the Watauga Association formed, they tried to form the state of Franklin out of people who were settlers of North Carolina. When they won the Revolution and North Carolina was becoming a state, they wanted to have their own government because they were across the mountain from them, and they didn't feel like they should be part of it. So they tried to get John Sevier, who became the first governor of Tennessee, to be the governor of the state of Franklin, and they petitioned Congress to create this state, and it ultimately failed. But what happened was, while this was going on, there were actually skirmishes between North Carolina and the state of Franklin. And there was a battle at Tipton Haynes Farm in Johnson City, where John Sevier and some of his men were captured by pro-North Carolina forces over there. He had tried to do a raid to take they took some of his slaves, I think what it was, and he tried to do a raid to take them back, and they captured him. They ended up putting him in jail. Well, he got pardoned, or he wasn't prosecuted, I guess is what it was. He was released because he wasn't prosecuted, and he ended up renouncing the state of Franklin and going on to be a state legislator in North Carolina. Now, when the state of Franklin was formed, the people who lived in this area actually wanted John Sevier to lead them, but he didn't want to. And he just did it out of a sense of duty, basically. But then when he went to after he, basically said he was sorry for trying to start the state of Franklin and getting into the military skirmishes, he went on to join the North Carolina legislature, and he led the charge to create Tennessee. He basically voted to push, everything west of the Appalachians would be a different state called Tennessee, and he ended up being the first governor of that state after. So ultimately, he ended up creating his state of Franklin, and it was even bigger than the state of Franklin that they tried to create, which was just, northeast Tennessee, and ended up going out to the Mississippi River, and he was the first governor of that state. So this cheers to those guys who started the Watauga Association 250 years ago in 1772. They were, they did something historic and did something pretty amazing, and it's cool to remember them. And let's see here, we got. I'm not seeing half the chats here, I don't think.
Yeah, some of them look like they've been.
So as Jimmy says, she was so nonchalant when she told me, quite shockingly.
The one you're missing is, it says, I know a woman in Texas who had 4 abortions, none of which were due to rape, just her irresponsible behavior.
Oh, okay. And then Dalton has a message retracted, and Dalton says, well, B, I don't want to argue, but I wasn't going to end up in a dumpster or meth den. I just had a father who had sex irresponsibly, and I was the result of that, and he wanted me not to be born.
I don't know why I've got some that you don't have.
Huh.
There's the...
B says, what about rape victims? No girl wants to have pawpaws young, and sometimes abortion's better than a kid ending up in a dumpster or living in a meth den until it dies. Yeah, a lot of people make that argument. And again, I'm not going to get into the abortion argument. Basically, I'm not picking a side on it either way or another. I don't. More the
I don't like. You're trying to make is this is going to change some stuff. That's your point. Is we're going to keep track of.
I am pro-choice. I don't like abortion, but I don't think I'm still to where I don't think that making things illegal is the solution to a lot of these things. But I don't like drug use either, but I don't think drugs should be illegal. So I kind of find myself in a similar position to that.
Well, I mean, like drugs, I think Doug Stanhope is a comedian, and we use comedians and stuff like that. He says, like, the drug laws don't make sense because the drug, it's like the vice itself is the punishment. Like, right. Nobody has a good time on drugs and wakes up the next day and goes, whew, feel great. Like, bro, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you drink a bunch, you wake up feeling like shit the next day. Yeah. You don't need to also have to pay a $200 fine because of, drunken disorderly conduct or whatever. So if you go to more complicated matters, you can see that it gets squirrely.
Yeah. And most of the states did have a thing in place for the thing, like it was there was a thing in place for rape and incest. Most of the states that even did say they were going to ban it, they said, they left something in place for except in the case of rape and incest and to save the life of the mother. But a lot of that still wasn't good enough for a lot of pro-abortion activists, and I think they look at it from a different perspective.
I think I would like to posit, and I guess this may be my only stance on the big A topic would be maybe the same thing that happened to the trans movement and the issues we have with the sexuality and the deviant behavior in public, just to kind of look what I can do, mm-hmm. Maybe it's the same situation with abortions, like you really want to, like, what woman would get raped and be like, oh great, I'm gonna have that baby? I can't think of a single woman out there that would really want to have a rapist baby.
Well, there are not necessarily that they want to, but there are a lot of people who do think that they'll say, well, that's not the baby's fault. And I saw a lot of people on pro-life Twitter.
That's just a real wild one. You're gonna have to live up to.
This is with some crazy ones that I saw people saying, I'm the product of a rape. I'm glad my mom didn't abort me. And I saw a lot of people posting that. Of course, that
could be a great opinion too. But like, I'm just saying, like, people get wild with some of the stuff they say with this argument.
Oh yeah, they do.
Like, they do. Really.
And again, I didn't get into it, so we could even decide to try to decide this issue tonight. Basically, I was showing that.
Yeah,
it's being used to divide people because it's an issue that you're never going to come to. You're not going to come together on these sides, and it is a way to basically hyperpolarize the country, and that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, my point being, did they do to abortion what we did to the trans movement, where they're now wearing dildos for story time? Like, because you press something down so hard, the rebound is so extreme. So did they suppress what actually could have been just a normal medical procedure for somebody who really doesn't need to be having a baby. And yes, I do count I'm going to hate this child and make its life miserable a good excuse to maybe consider that.
Well,
but we made it so demonic that now when I would leave an 8:15 class at ETSU, there would be Catholic preachers out there with a 40-foot. It's not a joke. I got pictures at home. They would like 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry, nobody wants to see this. A giant aborted fetus on this 40-foot tall billboard thing they'd erected in the middle of King's or was it Water Square or whatever it is, and it takes it to that level. And so now that we're spotting each other, and you've got this idiot in a Catholic outfit and a fucking cowboy out there also raging against Fleetwood Mac for some reason, dumb. But they're making me look at a bloody baby first thing in the morning. I don't want to see that. But on that same time, I don't really. Is it good behavior for girls to be running around bragging about their abortions? You know what I'm saying? I think there's like something weird with society. Like, I'm not anti-abortion. I just think you're really deluded and you should accept what it really is. That's all. Like, make it a little bit more serious. Don't be so proud of it like it's going and getting a flu shot, you know?
I agree.
That's all.
Dalton says, I hate commenting on this because it's such a touchy subject, but I was nearly aborted and my parents were a married couple and they took precautions not to have a child, but it happened anyway. Dalton says, and I'm glad I still had to live. Well, we're glad you're here too. Jimmy says, Cliff, you're correct that the two sides will never agree. My daughter and I don't see eye to eye on the issue. We just don't discuss it. We just agree to disagree. And Jimmy says, I'm glad you're here, Dalton. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the best way to do it.
I'm glad. Like you were fortunate enough to have good parents.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm saying. And there's a lot of people that child definitely would have not. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? I know that sounds awful, but
well,
like,
I don't think we can make that judgment though, because some of the most important people in history have come from some of the worst backgrounds in history. So I don't think
we're going back to our zero Hitler policy.
Yeah, I don't think we're in any position to decide who deserves or doesn't deserve to be born. I think it's just it's an individual.
Yeah, well,
it's an individual basis, and
like you're saying, it just a conversation. My stance is not real concrete on this. I really just wish, I guess I'm just tired of seeing the media and political groups use something that could be discussed. And instead of discussing it, they just set up just an endless amount of straw men for us to shoot at. And it's just real frustrating to see people take that bait over and over and over again.
Yep. Well, hey, we appreciate you joining us tonight. I think that's a good place to wind it up. I think we've gotten we're to the point where if we keep going, we're just going to be talking in circles. I think we've done that to a degree already, but it's hard not to on this subject. So I appreciate you all getting in the chat with us and making your opinions heard. And we want to invite you to come back with us on Wednesday night. We're going to get into the news and current events roundup, and then that's going to be 10 p.m. And then Sunday, we're also going to get into another topic. So we'll see what happens between now and then to what we decide. But there's been a lot going on in the AI and crypto markets and all this stuff. So that may be a way we look in the stock market, and we may get into that a little bit. Maybe the Federal Reserve and the beginning of the stock market and that kind of thing. We haven't really got into that on this show yet. So I think that would be an interesting topic to discuss. So we want to thank you all for joining us. Again, like, share, subscribe, send this around to somebody that you think might enjoy the discussion. We're trying to have a nuanced discussion. We're not trying to persuade you one way or another. Yeah, and we're trying to giggle. We're trying to have fun. Stance. So that's what we're about here. So we're not trying to get you to choose one side or another. We're not trying to choose it to cause arguments. We're trying to get to the middle of it and just look at it from a realistic point of view about where it could be going and see what you think about it too. So with that in mind, we will see you on Wednesday night at 10 p.m. where we get into the news and current events. Y'all have a good weekend, and well, the rest of your weekend. We got 15 minutes of the weekend left.
Enjoy your 15 minutes.
All right, folks. See you next time. Bye.